Today's guest and I grew up together during our hormonal angst-fueled teenage years, and we've been through a lot together. His early onset passion for law enforcement, the military, and emergency services never left him, as during his transition into adulthood, he dragged along all three of those with him as a way of life. Upon his exit from high school, he immediately enrolled into the military, throwing himself to the wolves, so to speak, fighting the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, which was no easy pill to swallow for anyone. Beyond that, he's still an active volunteer firefighter for the town of Cedar Grove, a first responder for the Verona Rescue Squad, was a police officer for the town of Verona for almost a decade, and his current main bread and butter is training canine along with normal house dogs across all levels of obedience and skill. Please welcome my guest, my brother, Officer Justin Nielsen. You're now listening to the Sauce Talk Podcast. What up, everybody? It's your boy Al Siggity Sauce, and welcome back to the Sauce Talk Podcast. Today's guest is a dear old friend of mine, and he has a laundry list of accomplishments. He's a war veteran who fought in the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan, volunteer firefighter for the Cedar Grove Fire Department, volunteer first responder for the Verona Rescue Squad, ex-Verona police officer, current canine officer for the Somerset County Sheriff's Department, and he's also the owner of Cover Canine Training Facilities. Whew, that was a long one. But please, he's got a very interesting story. I love him like a brother, and I haven't seen him in years. So please, without further ado, Justin Nielsen. What's up, baby?
How are you?
Good
to see you, brother.
Doing well.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been it's been besides that one time I saw you previous. It's probably been about 15 years or so.
Long time.
It's insanity. I can't believe you're here and what all you've accomplished and stuff. You make me proud, man.
Yeah, likewise. I can't believe everything everything you got going on here. This is awesome. It's so cool. It's been a long journey for sure. What's crazy is ever since I started this podcast, I've been reconnecting with a lot of old souls, especially from high school years and stuff like that. Speaking of which, I was just talking to you before. I went to our 20-year high school anniversary reunion, man. It was insane. Like, I wasn't even going to go, but Mike Manley comes to my big summer party that I throw here. Yeah. And he's like, listen, I'm going to this, this reunion party. You should come. And I was like, it's not really my thing. I'm not really into that. But he's like, nah, come. So the next day, he sent me a text message with like a bunch of fucking, the whole itinerary for it, and added me to the Facebook group. So I was like, man, you show me a little bit of effort that you really want me somewhere. Yeah. Cool. Like, I'm like, oh wow, he really wants me there. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll go. Fuck it, I'll go. And let me tell you something. I'm so happy I did. It was such a nostalgic journey down memory lane. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe the people I saw. Like, I even saw Carolina Damauska. Do you remember her? Remember that name? Yes. Yeah.
Dude, it's like her, Kimberly Tanzi, Jenna Klein, Jessica Klein. Like, dude, it was crazy just to see Ashley Waits, Dylan Mead, Gerald Tobia, like Dan Stoddard. It was wild. It was fucking bonk. I really wish you were there, man.
I know. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed it. Hopefully the next time. Yeah, got 10 more years to go.
Yeah, we do. We got
10 more years.
10 more fucking years.
Yeah.
Besides that, though, I haven't really seen you since high school, and so much has happened in your life since then. Mm-hmm. You've accomplished, obviously, during my intro, all that stuff and more. Yeah. So I not only would like to get caught up with you, but I'd like to serve this podcast as a highlight reel and for your honorable existence, if you will.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I met you around 7th or 8th grade, which is when you moved to Verona.
Yep.
And one thing that I always admired about you is how true you stayed to yourself. And for the listeners and the viewers out there, what I mean by that is ever since I've known you, you were into, anything that had to do with police, law enforcement, military stuff, first responder, fire, the whole nine. Like that, you literally not only were always into that stuff, but then as you got older, you transitioned into your adulthood accomplishing and doing every single one of those things that you were into.
Yep.
And that is absolutely bonkers. The fact that you were able to do that, be successful in each one, and just accomplish all of them. And not a lot of people could do one thing, let alone you did everything that you sought after to do. So I want to give you your flowers for that. But
thank you.
Retrospectively, looking back on it, how does that feel to know what I just said, that you thought about all that stuff, loved all that stuff, had the interest, and you actually ended up doing it all?
Yeah. I think even for me, it's a lot whenever somebody, you know what I mean? Like, I try to be like a humble guy. You know what I mean? Like, I like what I do. Like, I like to help people. To me, I never had like a second thought about it. If I'm going to commit to something and I want to do it, I try to move in that direction. Like, I did each one of them kind of one at a time, built myself up. If once I get involved in something, I try to learn as much as I can about that and expand on it.
Yeah.
But I know for myself, like, I don't know. I never look at the totality of the circumstance, everything that I've done. That's just who I am, right? Yeah. It's just who me. It's just me, you know. So yeah.
But it's remarkable to see it and witness it. I really enjoy.
Yeah,
enjoy seeing it. You had to grow up very fast. Mm-hmm. You had an interesting childhood, right. And you had to grow up very fast. How would you describe the experience of growing up for you?
So yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of moving around. You know, so my parents split up when I was younger. I lived with my dad for a little while. Then we moved to Verona. Moving from house to house. Again, you have that responsibility, being in a situation like that where you're picking up more than probably the average person is. Yeah. They didn't get along very well. My parents didn't get along very well, but I had an amazing relationship with my sister. You know what I mean? I had a lot of support in her, and I just did the best that I could to get through it until I could graduate. You keep your eye on the prize. Yeah. You're rushing to grow up almost, So I put a lot of my focus and attention into, at 16, you could join the rescue squad, right? So 17, I think 16, 17, you could join the fire department. I mean, after school, that was it. You know what I mean? Like I would go there, I'd ride calls, and it was like a positive environment that I could be around good people. Not to say that it was a negative environment being at home, but at the same time, I didn't, there's other things that I wanted to do and things that I aspired to do, and I just tried to focus my energy into that to keep myself out of trouble.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So since you just kind of covered one of the lanes rather, if you could remember, at what age, besides that, since you just covered that was 16 years old, at what age do you remember you developing these interests for like law enforcement and the military and stuff like that? And was there anybody in your family that onset that interest early on? Yeah,
so it's actually kind of bifold there. Believe it or not, the whole aspect of law enforcement, it started when I was very young. So again, growing up in a household where there was issues and stuff like that. This is the truth, right? It's at the end of the day, it is what it is. The police coming to the house, okay? Me as a young kid and having them come in and intervene, if there was arguing or fighting or whatever was going on there, not to say that it was violent, but there was many a time where the police came to my house growing up as a young kid, and I always looked at that person coming in and they brought peace with them, and you see somebody walking in the uniform. So for me, that was a big part of that. There was a police officer that lived around the corner, and I remember him telling me like, hey, look, like if you do good things and you work hard, like you can have this. Came by one day, took me for a ride in the car. Let me ride with him in the police car on the block. Like I'll never forget. It was a Little Falls Police. Yeah, it was the officer. Yeah. So, sorry. No, you're good. So that aspect there, that was a big part of it. And then, family members. So I had my Uncle Pete, he was on the rescue squad in Verona. He was a lieutenant there. He did heavy rescue with them. And then, also my cousin Alex. So he's the godfather to my daughter.
Oh, okay.
Still to this day, extremely influential to me. He was the chief of the fire department at Cedar Grove. So I had both of these family members that served as first responders. That really kind of paved the way and, showed me, look, again, if you do good things and you work hard, like you can have this. And they dangled the carrot and I went for it. So
wow, that's amazing. Especially what you just said about what attracted you to law enforcement. It almost acted as like a safe space for you.
It did.
Where it was comforting when you saw them, so you sought out that comfort. It's remarkable as equally as it is sad.
Yeah, it is.
You're kind of kind of making me upset, like you're thinking about it. No, I'm an emotional. I'm a water sign, baby. You know how I get down. But yeah, that's remarkable that was the actual reason, because a lot of people have different reasons why they do things, and
that's the truth, man. Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah, that's bananas, man. You know, whenever I think about you, and I knew you were coming here today, so I like to reminisce and try to get myself in the headspace that is you, if you will, you know, in the most heterosexual way possible. Pause. But I was just thinking about, like, you know, the older we get, not that it gets more depressing, but it just makes me miss being a kid more and more, especially growing up in the town that we grew up in. Like, when I was there, I didn't really care for it too much. I was like, yeah, fuck this town sucks, this and that. And then now, like, when I pass by there, it's just like all the nostalgia runs through me. Like, when I drive down Brookdale, the street that Brookdale Avenue School's on, I just think about you and me and all of us hanging out back there, FM Brown, riding bikes, going to VV, getting cigarettes.
Simpler times.
Simpler times. But it's remarkable to just, like, think on that stuff and, excuse me, and you know, how much of delinquents we fucking really were. Especially, what was the street that you grew up on by the baseball field, the one by Lanning? Elmwood.
Yeah.
Remember how many times we used to hang out over there by the dugout, drinking Black House, getting hammered.
Right.
That was the greatest. Riding bikes, all that shit. Me, you, Brian, Schummel, going all over town. I mean, you were the first person to introduce me to a CB radio.
Yeah. We had the walkie-talkies, so we could, no matter where we were, we could
we went
keep
everywhere.
in touch with each other. Yeah,
we went absolutely everywhere. It was a lot of fun, man.
Yep.
What got you into CB radios anyway?
Was
it just like all the fire department stuff?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Again, it was just a way that we could all, as kids, you have walkie-talkies and stuff, and we realized that those went the furthest. Radio Shack was still up at...
Oh, Radio Shack's a beast.
It was where GNC was. So we went up there, and they had them on sale, and we were like, let's all buy these, and we could talk to each other, you know? That was before Nextel, so...
Yes, it was.
It
was before the chirp, but it was a lot of fun, man. We used to, like, separate, go all over town, and just...
See if you could talk to each other, right?
What's funny about it, too, is I personally never was really into law enforcement. I never was into any of that stuff. I didn't hate it. It just wasn't a thing that I was into. So hanging out with you and hanging out with like-minded individuals as yourself, like Brian McSeveny, who's now also a cop, and Schummel and et cetera. It was cool to, like, see that side of things and to see from your perspective things that you enjoyed. So it was really fun to, like, get an insight to what it was like in your mind, you know, to be in your mind. And I had a lot of fun. I got to admit, like, it wasn't my thing, but it was a lot of fun. You know,
the excitement.
I can't record this podcast without bringing something up. And for the viewers and the listeners, I'd rather you tell it.
Here we go.
I'm
nervous.
Can you explain to the viewers and listeners what SORT is?
It's the Special Operations Response Team. It's basically a gang of delinquents that ran the woods behind Brookdale there.
It was very...
It was a glorified fight club is what it was. A bunch of kids wrestling in the woods.
But it was basically a fucking precursor to what you would end up doing, going through boot camp
all
and
getting
shit.
Ready,
Man, looking back on that stuff, what was your idea behind that shit to start it?
It just came to fruition. That was it. We wanted to put a name on our friendship. So, like I said, most places they call that a gang.
No, it was definitely it was brutal.
It was crazy.
Sorry, Mike Talbot, if you're watching this. I feel bad for that guy. I wonder where he is, man. I haven't seen him in fucking God knows how long.
Me neither. Yeah,
he was a nice kid.
Yeah,
he was good. He was smart. So you and I were freshmen in high school when 9/11 struck, the tragedy that, you know, heard round the world. You know, it was a devastating blow to not only our nation, but to all of us just even witnessing it, you know, let alone people that had family members that lived there and stuff. Was that place a big contributor to your interest in joining the military?
It was. Yeah.
Yeah?
So Pat Mulcahy.
Oh, my God, I forgot about him.
Pat enlisted right out of school. You know what I mean? So I remember him coming home, talking to him. Mike Snyder in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
He went in the Marine Corps. So, I mean, you know, I'm watching all these other guys. I knew right away, though, like after 9/11, it was like there was no question about it, what the what the direction was going to be. I'm like, nah, I'm going.
What was that? Do you remember that? If you could recall, do you remember what that day was like for you?
Yeah, actually, interesting story. I was suspended. I was
really?
Home. Yeah. Me and Brian. Me and Brian both. I'm 99.9% sure.
What'd you do to get suspended?
I think we deliberately we staged a fight or something. So we could both get, and then they started figuring it out. So they would suspend us at different times so we could, because they knew we were just want to hang out.
They were staggering you.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I was home. I was home that day, and my neighbor from upstairs came down, and he was banging on the window, and he's like, "Hey, turn the TV on." Obviously saw what was going on there. My mom was working at a school. She was working at one of the schools in Cedar Grove. We went over there, and then I think that afternoon I went up to the rescue squad. So I wasn't on the squad yet. I was still a little. It was right before I joined. But again, I still knew everybody. I would still make my way up there and whatnot. And they were going to the city. There was a lot of people from around here that responded.
Yeah, that was a crazy time, man.
Yeah, I know. Me, Brian, and Mike went up to what was it, Lookout?
Yes, Lookout.
Yeah, so we went up there. And I remember standing on the rocks up there, looking at the city and seeing all the smoke and everything rising. So
yeah, that smoke was fucking bonkers, man. I'll never forget that day. That was a fucking really sad day, man. Yeah, seeing them roll in those TVs on the rollers with the TV. No, because in homeroom, I was in school that day, and it was in homeroom, and we could they would put on the news or something in the morning, before the morning announcements or whatever, or right after the announcements. But I remember them pulling it up on the TV and just seeing the building, and the next one hit, and I was just like, wow. We ended up going in the bathroom. And what was that big dude's name? Was it Dumont?
Yeah, Dumont.
Dumont. Oh, like a French. Dumont.
Yeah, Mr. Dumont.
That dude, we were in the bathroom smoking cigarettes, and there must have been 40 kids in there. It was dude, it was crazy in there. Right. It was just a fog machine in there. Right. And he walked in, didn't even know what to do. What are you gonna do? You write up everybody? He just fucking walked right out, which is not like him. He's a fucking prick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was an enforcer.
Yeah, he was an enforcer.
He's an enforcer. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a roughneck, man. Yeah. But nice guy. I mean,
yeah.
Whatever. We were jerk offs. So
we didn't exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
never bad. And so I always tell everybody, they say, growing up, we weren't bad. We just. Yeah. We had our own way of doing things. And never did anything malicious. We never hurt anybody. We didn't steal anything, but we were definitely troublemakers,
Except in Miss Denisha's class. Miss Denisha's class, we tortured that crooked finger woman. Remember, she used to point like this, and her fucking finger, she had that. I don't know if it was arthritis that bent her shit, whatever. Right. That's and they get that hand condition where it could alter and deform your fingers. Yeah, she'd point at you, but she'd really be pointing to the guy to the right of you. You know what I mean? It's fucking shot. So listen, I'm not well versed in the military at all. Any knowledge that I've ever had throughout my life was because of you, the whole Semper Fi thing and all that shit. I never knew anything about that because it just wasn't a thing of mine. So. Let alone the terminology that comes along with it. So talk to me today because I have a lot of not only personal questions, but educational questions regarding the military, as well as your stint rather, in the military in general. So talk to me like a toddler, like a military for dummies, if you will. You know what I mean? So you went in right after high school, correct? Right as soon as you graduated, almost.
Yeah, it took a little bit of time. I started the process as soon as I graduated. I started going. You have to go through the ASVAB, is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. It's like your SAT to get in. So your written test, and then you have to go to Fort Hamilton, New York, to do your physical. Test. So there's a whole. You can't. You know what I mean? When you go in, it takes a little bit of time to draw your contract up and all that stuff.
Yeah. What did you enlist as initially? And you already covered some of the process, but what was it that you wanted to start as? Because you ended up being in the Army, but you originally had other plans, right?
Yeah, so I was looking at the Coast Guard. So I had a cousin who was in the Coast Guard, and he was a big advocate for me joining that. He knew that I had a passion for law enforcement. The Coast Guard, one of their primary functions is they fall under Homeland Security, so they do a lot of maritime enforcement and interdiction, counterterrorism, that type of stuff. So I looked at the Coast Guard. I took the test. I had basically, I would have been able to get in, but their time for me to leave for basic training was like a year. And I'm like, I gotta go now. You know, again, circumstances at home dictated. Like it was like, no, like outside of the fact that I genuinely wanted to go, like it was like, it's now, like I have to go. So next door was the Army. Right. So I always had a passion for it. Not to say that was the reason why, but it literally, like the recruiting station, it's all kind of in the same place. And like, I just went over and spoke with those guys. And again, Pat was in the infantry. You know, I kind of saw what he was doing, and Black Hawk Down had came out right around that same time. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. You know, so I went in and spoke with them. I took the test. I came up with the right score that I needed to get the job. And
it's awesome.
Yeah.
So for educational purposes, can you break down each military division? I believe there's 6 in total, right? What is there? The Air Force, the Marines, the Army, the Navy.
Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines.
Coast Guard, Marine. Yeah. There's one more, right? Is there not?
Space Force.
Really?
Space Force is its own branch. Technically, it falls under the Air Force, but
no shit. Okay, so that's the main 6, right? What is the purpose of each one as far as the specific operations go? Like, since there's 6 divisions, what is the purpose of each division, and what are their order of who goes in first, last, etc.? Like, what is the planning, the sequence rather?
I think that nowadays it's probably a little bit different as far as like sequence is concerned. Everybody has their own respective responsibility in what they do. So, you know, it depends on what's going on, where it's going on, how many people are needed to deploy is going to kind of dictate who gets deployed for that. So,
gotcha.
Right. So, you know, the Army, right, is your primary ground force. They have aviation. They don't have planes, but they have helicopters. You have light infantry. You have mechanized infantry. So light infantry is your typical foot soldier. There's a bunch of different types of infantry within the Army. So I served in the airborne infantry. I served in the mountain infantry. I did reconnaissance with them. So the list goes on, but they're your ground force, right? The Army is the primary ground force. The Marines specialize in amphibious. So that is going from sea to land. They work closely with the Navy, so they do a lot of protection, at least to my understanding. I was never in the Marines. I'm not speaking for them. Right? And there's obviously that whole rivalry there.
Which is dumb. We're all on the same team, right?
It's
egos, men and their egos.
At the end of the day, like when I was in Afghanistan, like we had Marines attached to us. Like you break each other's chops. But when you really do it, everybody, you know, it is what it is. So, but yeah, so that's kind of what their focus and attention is. They'll still function almost as the Army will, right? The same concept there. You'll have Marines, you know, obviously in country doing stuff. Navy is, you know, Navy's Navy. So their ships, and then they have their specialized units amongst them as well. That might do other stuff outside of that. But Space Force.
Space Force,
still
baby.
trying to figure that one out.
And
the Coast Guard, I said before, you know,
which is what you tried to enlist as originally, but the wait was too long, so you wanted to go now out of necessity as well as want or need, rather. Little combination of both, right? So once you get enlisted into the military, what is the very first step? I would assume, besides going through the aptitude test, the physical test, things like that, boot camp would be the first real quote-unquote step, right? What is boot camp like?
It's interesting. So I went, anybody who enlists in the infantry goes through Fort Benning in Georgia. So it's different than other jobs. If you were to enlist as a mechanic or, you know, some other function, so you have support roles within the Army, you'll go to basic training, you'll graduate from basic training, and then they'll send you somewhere else to learn whatever your job is going to be. So you learn how to be a soldier, and then you go learn how to, you know, fix vehicles, cook food, supply, whatever it is that you're going to do, amongst other combat roles too. The infantry, when you enlist and you go to training, you arrive there, and from day one till the day that you graduate, you're being trained to do just that.
Wow.
That's it. So straight through from the day that you show up till you finish, you're being trained as an infantryman. So it's different than the other MOSs. The other military occupational specialties is your job. So everybody has like a letter, a number and a letter. So infantry is 11 Bravo.
11 Bravo.
So if you ever hear two people talking, oh, what was your MOS? It's what was your job? What did you do when you were in? I was on 31, whatever, 31 whiskey. I don't know what that is, but they say whatever it was, maybe medic or something like that. 11 Bravo was infantry.
Oh, wow.
0311 for the Marine Corps. You know that one, it's infantry, right? Like we know that. Like if somebody says I was 0311, we had the same job, different branch, right? So you did that in the Marine Corps. I did it in the Army.
Like I said, I'm not familiar with terminology, so it's nice, educational for not only me, but for the guys out there.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So when you enlisted, there was 2 wars going on simultaneously.
Right.
The Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
The Iraq War, if I'm correct, lasted from 2003 to 2011, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the war in Afghanistan, 2001 to 2021, which is the one that they pulled out of recently, the whole one that everybody hates Biden for.
Right.
Since you fought in both, I would assume you fought in the Iraq War first. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How many years were you there?
I spent 15 months there.
Oof.
Yeah. So a little over a year.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be there a year and they kept me.
Yeah. Could you briefly, for educational purposes again,
Sure.
Could you briefly explain what was the cause of each said war and what was the purpose as a country to fight over there for that war?
So with Afghanistan, there was direct ties back to 9/11 with the Taliban. With Iraq, you had Al-Qaeda that was there. The initial reason for going into the country was weapons of mass destruction. Those weren't found. There's a huge, people, all kinds of mixed emotions and feelings about why we were there. What I always tell everybody is that regardless of the initial reasons on why we went there there people in country that wanted to commit attacks against the United States, whether that be because of our presence or because of their alliance to, the Taliban or whatever these other entities were. It was there. I saw it firsthand. So that would be the reason for being there.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's in layman's terms, right? It's basically what it is. So,
That's the big thing with Iraq. Everybody goes, weapons of mass destruction. We didn't find anything. And I'm like, yeah, but once we were there, we found some people that didn't like us. So it became a battleground there where people from other countries that wanted to fight with the U.S., came into Iraq, and we weren't just fighting people from Iraq; it's people from all over the region.
Yeah. So I know you already kind of expressed that you kind of joined because out of curiosity and necessity, right? Was there anything besides that for when you joined that was your end goal or that you sought out to accomplish within yourself regarding enlisting in the military?
I definitely wanted to get promoted. As far as you say my career is concerned, what did I want to accomplish while I was in? I wanted to do as much as possible. Again, you're in, once you enlist and you're working under these people, right? You look up to them. Yeah. They become role models to you. So you're overseas and you're with these guys. You're in extremely dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And you see these guys acting without fear, and they're doing stuff, and those become your role models. Those are the people that you aspire to want to be like. Yeah. So you look at their accomplishments and you try to mirror those the best that you can.
Yeah.
So whether it be promotions or it be going to specialized schools, training, stuff like that, I was like, okay, this is what I want to commit to.
Yeah. So after graduating boot camp, right? Mm-hmm. I assume you can. I'm sure you have a general idea of what it's like for all the other divisions, but obviously nobody will know more about your division than the one you were in. Mm-hmm. So after you graduate boot camp, what is the very next step for a soldier before actually getting dispatched and going into war overseas? What is the next step?
You get assigned a duty station. So you get assigned to a unit. So once you graduate from basic training, you're kind of you're a number at that point. You have to be assigned to a unit.
Okay.
And then that unit is going to be on its own schedule for deployment. So okay. I graduated. When you enlist, you have a pick of duty stations, where do you want to go? And I said Germany, something or whatever it was, and Hawaii. And I got Hawaii. And they sent me to Hawaii. So I went to Hawaii, but here's the catch, because everybody always says, oh, you went to Hawaii. Oh my God, it's so rough. I was there for 3 months and I got on a plane and I went right over to Iraq. Wow. So because I did it was rapid deployment incentive. So when you enlisted, you would get an additional, I forgot what it was, like $200 pay or something for the first year that you were in the Army if you volunteered to go to a unit that was immediately deploying to go overseas. And I was like, I'll take the money.
Oh, thanks.
So I got sent to the 25th Infantry Division, and then right away again I did like a quick train up with them. I think I went to California for some training in the desert, and then that was it. We got on the plane and went overseas. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I want your perspective on something. Mm-hmm. Like I said, anything that I ask you tonight, you don't have to answer. I'm a fucking nerd. I'm a curious guy, and I enjoy to ask really detailed questions.
Right.
Obviously, there's no pressure to answer any of them, but I would like to hear your perspective, because it's one thing to be a person like me from the outside looking in to just assume, right? Assuming is not necessarily a bad thing, but in certain situations, it's not always good to assume. And I would like to see life, especially during that time, through your lens. Mm-hmm. You said stuff was a little rough at home, so you want to make a rush. You got to get out. You were basically surviving on your own. Mm-hmm. And you just had to get out of Dodge, and you thought it was good for you, healthy for you, to align you in your life, and it'll help you hopefully excel in the future in your career and stuff like that. So it was a good base for you personally to join the military and get moving on, right? But after you join, after you go through boot camp's hard enough, right, as it is, but it's merely just a baby step into what you're about to touch, right? Mm-hmm. Go through all the training, go to the base, whatever. It's finally the time for you to go overseas. Mm-hmm. What was going through your mind the minute you get on that plane or whatever mode of transportation that it was to take you from your base and that's it, it's time? From the minute you landed overseas and you get off that, whatever it was, a Jeep, Humvee, plane, whatever, and your boots finally touch that dirt. And there's no fucking looking back. There's only looking forward. What was going through your head that moment? And what was that realization like for you to be like, this is it now? Like, there's no turning back. What was that like for you internally?
You're committed at that point. Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's no turning back. You step off the plane. You're with a group of people, right, that you've trained with and you trained up with, that you've gotten there with. So you have that support structure of the guys that you're working alongside. But something that kind of like stuck with me is I'll never forget. So when you arrive there, you do what's called a left seat, right seat. So left seat, right seat is like, we got to Iraq and the unit that was leaving, they take you out for like a couple weeks to a month or whatever it is. And you ride, like I drive, right? Like, or they drive and I sit in the passenger seat, and then we switch and then they leave. But like, you're looking at these guys and you're like, you can see what they've been through over the course of the last year. And I'm like, this is what I'm going to look like by the end of this deployment, the 12 months and knowing what they experienced. Like it's a very, humbling experience. Like, as much as you go through all this training and there's all this excitement, anybody who's ever seen anybody who's like just graduated from training, like, you're full of piss and vinegar, like they're like, oh hey, all tough. I'm like, it's real now. Like, you're there and like, you're committed to this, and you really don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what to expect, but you have that support structure of the guys that you're with, and everybody has to kind of figure it out together and working alongside that unit before they leave. But yeah, that's pretty much what it felt like.
Yeah, I'm sure, like you just said, when you're like the left seat, right seat, and you're going through your initial tour or whatever, and you're seeing the expressions on their face of experienced people that have been there. It must be like when you could read a painful expression, it's like it hits a lot different. When you could like really, damn, like somebody, they wear it. Right. They wear the experience on their face, and just to be able to witness it must be absolutely fucking bonkers. Yeah, firsthand.
You can see it.
Yeah,
you can see it when you talk to these guys. There's something different.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's with any sort of trauma or experience in general, right? You could, and everybody, I guess, wears their proverbial mask, if you will. It's bonkers. But anyway, after you land, you do that. What is the next, besides the left seat, right seat, what is the next move for a soldier? Now is you have a briefing with the commander in charge, I guess. I don't even know the rankings. I don't know who you would talk to first, if it would be a sergeant or a whatever. Since you're in war, I guess you get the initial briefings and the whole training and stuff. What is the next move? Are you moving in somewhere? Like, is there like a, I don't want to sound like an idiot per se, even though I already do tonight, but like, you know how like coaches have like a playbook, right?
Yeah.
I assume there's some sort of playbook, if you will, quote unquote, for a military outfit, right? So what is the next steps like after you land and go through your stuff?
Yeah. So it was you're assigned a mission. What is your objective while you're there?
Yeah.
For us, it was counterinsurgency. So counterinsurgency is we had kind of like a dual mission there. Counterinsurgency, and we were also training host nation security forces. So what does that mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
What that means is that you get to whatever base it's going to be that you're going to be operating out of. So we arrived in Kirkuk. That's where the city that I was at.
Kirkuk.
There's a base in Kirkuk, Fob Warrior. That's where I was stationed. So you fly in. It was an old airport. We land there. We get off the plane. You're assigned where you're going to live. You start doing your mission prep for the day. We're going to go out to this police department today. We're going to meet with those officers. We're going to do some training with them. We're going to work with them. We're going to try to collect intelligence on what's going on in the city and who needs to be addressed.
Gotcha.
So our objective was counterinsurgency and to train the police officers. We did a lot of work with them. And that training, again, too, when you say training police officers, like you're training them live. Like it's not like we're running an academy for them. Like it's like, okay, we're going to go out together. We're going to do joint operations and we're going to raid houses and we're going to, raid businesses and do interdictions on vehicles and run checkpoints. And you're doing counterinsurgency. You're looking for people and you're doing a lot of that based off of human intel. So, there you have people that are reporting information saying so-and-so, might be involved with the insurgency. Yeah. And you're going to go and you're going to visit them.
Man,
so
your nerves must have been shot. I'm just trying to think, like, I'm trying to vicariously, live through you and just thinking about like being over there and you're in the fucking middle of nowhere.
Right.
Like it's life or death.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, like, especially being, like I said, a very emotional person. It's really tough. And probably the hardest part to balance it all is you can't really show weakness, right? Even though being emotional and showing that it's not technically a weakness, but in a scenario like that, it is. And, especially if you're a person of authority, if you're in charge of a squadron or something like that, and you're showing weakness, I could assume like, not only are you fucking yourself up, you're fucking your whole crew. Cause they're gonna be like, damn, if this guy's not sure, I'm not really sure. And that's probably a reality that's kind of tough. But I always consider you a very strong individual, not only emotionally, but, just internally in general, even though you know how to deal with it, you know how to deal with the pain, with the problems, and you're able to you're one of your main mottos is always forward.
Yeah, always forward.
Always. I mean, even through your business now, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
It's always forward.
Yep.
So, and that never changed in you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to ask is obviously being over there overseas, you're in war. There's always that possibility that you'd never make it back, right? There's always that possibility that, you may never see your family again. And that's like one of those harsh realities that I assume would set in frequently while over there. You're not getting sleep, you're manic, you're sleeping with one eye open. How did you maintain personally the mental strength to push through those moments and to not show weakness like I just said previously? How did you maintain that fight, so to speak, to look forward to carry out what you were sent there to do?
So part of it is, at least for myself, I'll start there. You come to terms with the fact that you could get killed, and that's it. You just have to kind of accept it. Like if you dwell on it and you allow yourself to like kind of fester in that, like I remember being in the back of the truck and driving and knowing like at any second we could drive over something and this could be it. And I remember just kind of like this calm kind of coming over me and I'm like, it's going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Like I don't have that control. There were multiple instances where I shouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. Really? I mean, very, very close calls. When it's your time, it's your time. There's a lot of guys that I was over there with that weren't fortunate enough to make it back. Obviously I'm very lucky to be here. But you can't, if you start to go down that road and you start to make that kind of the epicenter of like, hanging on to everything, you're not going to be able to focus. So you have to, again, it sounds like almost cliche, but like you have to focus on what's in front of you. Yeah. Like here's a problem, I solve it and I move on. Yeah. So you just have to keep your mind right, because that's a dark place to be, Yeah. So
when you speak on close calls, is there any that you could speak on that you remember vividly regarding close calls, and if you could share those stories if you can.
Yeah, so it's again, like a lot of times people ask you about instances like you said, just with that, like what's the closest as far as killing people, or those types of things. Like things happen while you're over there. One story that's always stuck with me that I don't know, it's crazy. I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to. If you don't want
it's good. It's good. So there was one night where we're doing house to house searches, right? So we're in Kirkuk again, too. Like not everybody there is a bad person, right? There's a lot of good people that live there that are just kind of mixed up in the middle of this stuff. We're going house to house. We're working with the Iraqi police. I come up to a gate. I remember banging on the gate. I hear somebody on the other side of the gate. The door opens. I have a couple of police officers with me. Those officers don't have the best training. They don't really know what they're doing. But I came around the gate. I put my rifle up. I see somebody standing in the dark, red laser on, and I'm getting ready. I see a handgun come up. I'm like, me and this guy are looking at each other. Right, I'm about to shoot this guy, and right at that second, like whatever it was, the laser moved and it glinted, and I can see the silhouette of like somebody standing to his left and to his right. And I'm like, do I have three people here? And I'm like, I'm letting slack out at this point. So for whatever reason, at the last second, I'm like screaming at this guy. He drops the gun. I let my finger, off the trigger. I went about shooting the guy, and it turned out that it was his wife and his daughter that were staying next to him. So he hears somebody banging on the gate. Again, it's like, yeah. So I almost smoked this guy in front of his family.
Wow.
But again, like somebody has a gun pointed at you. You know what I mean? Like you're making a decision. Like you have to, and that's the type of pressure and decisions that's put on somebody.
I don't want your job, bro.
Yeah. So it's again, like he dropped it. Lights come on. Like everybody rushes in. We grab the guy. Like. He wasn't supposed to have that anyway. At that time, you were only allowed to have a rifle. You weren't supposed to have a hand, whatever the rules were that were there. Yeah. So he wound up being arrested for it. But again, like, I don't, was this guy an insurgent? I don't think so. I
protecting his family, probably.
Based on the information, it seemed like you're living in a country where like it's pretty lawless at this point. You have you can't really you have to count on your own security. And he thought somebody was trying to come in to hurt him. And again, it's like, so you don't always know what's in front of you.
That could have ended bad.
Yeah. And I thank God till this day that again, like I wasn't like, I could sense the fear in him, right? Like I could sense the fear in him. Like I was in control at that time. But at the same time, like you're looking at a gun, but there was something, even though I couldn't understand what he was saying, like just on the little expression that I could see in the dark and the tone of his voice and the inflection, I was like, this guy, he's a lot more afraid than I am, like, so for whatever reason, I was good. I didn't put myself in danger. If I needed to do what I had to do, I would have walked away. Yeah. And he wouldn't have, but I made the decision not to, and thank God, I saved his life. And again, for the sake of his wife and daughter. Now being a dad, right, and being a husband,
I know.
Like you think about that, like reverse the roles real quick. You know what I mean? Like, So,
I mean that's what's crazy about that too is that's a real skill set to obtain, and that's what made you become such a good police officer because it's all about being able to read people and read energies and situations. And that's a situation that could have turned, we all know, could have turned very fucking bad, right? But it ended up turning good because of your smart decision making. I mean, we all make mistakes, so we all make bad decisions, right? Yeah. But it's those that we don't forget, right?
Right.
Oh, that's amazing, man. God bless that you. That's a pretty wild fucking story, I got to be honest. That's pretty scary. I'm sure being over there, being overseas, you probably lost a lot of fellow soldiers, right? I mean, that's just the name of the game when you go out there and things of that nature, especially ones that were probably close to you. You probably developed a lot of friendships over there, people that were in your whole clique and whatnot. And is there any stories that you remember clearly of when you lost somebody out there that was close to you, that you met out there, obviously not back at home, but that was out there and that sticks out in your head the most when you realize, like, man, this shit could be like, it can end, in a light switch. Is there any story in particular or a fellow soldier that you want to pay homage to right now and remembering him?
Yeah, so actually I keep in touch with his wife and his son. The guy's name was Michael Hook. And so we met in basic training. He was actually from New Jersey himself. Like we met in reception. So when you first get to basic training, you're like kind of getting issued your uniforms and stuff like that. They're yelling at you, but you're not like in training yet. So we met there. We get assigned to the same company in basic training. We go through basic training together. We get the same orders. We go to Hawaii. We're both assigned, to Hawaii. We both same deployment. Like I start from day one that I arrived at Fort Benning all the way through to me being on deployment. We were friends with each other. A couple of days before, everything happened again too, I remember him coming by and talking to me and whatnot. I came up on selection at that time for reconnaissance. So I was in country. I was in a regular infantry platoon, and then you have a reconnaissance unit. So those are the guys that are going to go out ahead of everybody to collect information, pass that stuff back. So I came up on selection for it. And my squad leader at the time, who I actually, again, just reconnected with, he reached out to me the other day.
Oh, wow.
He comes to me and he's like, hey, look, I know that you want to do this. I know that you have aspirations to go into it. It's a very select elite group of people. It's very cool to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But, we want you to stay here. We want you to, we have plans for you. We want to promote you. We want to make you a team leader. It's your decision. Do what you want to do. But again, we want you to stay here. So he kind of talked me into sticking around. But Mike came around. He's like, hey, look, the selection process is coming up. He took my spot. So he takes my spot, and within a very short period of time, that helicopter comes down. Him, along with everybody else that was on it, was lost. So again, another instance where I have no control over that.
Of course not.
You know what I mean? Many a time, like I said, you switch roles and stuff like that. His wife, I've spoke. Obviously, we've had this conversation. It was very close to being me. But we switched spots. An amazing, just absolutely amazing guy, total machine of a soldier.
Rest in peace, man. Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of war is there's casualty that comes with it. And I guess it must be kind of like, do you ever feel like you have survivor's guilt? I mean, it's not your fault, but I know some people victimize themselves that way and they shouldn't.
Yeah, I don't.
Good.
Yeah, I don't.
Good.
So
that's important.
It doesn't. Not to say it hurts, right? It's very. Again, I feel awful. I'm talking to his son, talking to his wife, but like I said, there's been so many instances where if I was standing 2 feet to the left, 2 feet to the right, things would have ended differently for me versus somebody else. It's not. There was nothing that I knew at that time, right? I didn't have any information that would have led me to know. You don't know. You know what I mean? You don't know. It's as simple as for me and for him, when we had that discussion before this happened, we're high-fiving each other. He wanted this. He wanted to be a sniper. That was what he wanted to do. Is he wanted to be in recon. I wanted to, and I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to do my time. Then I'll come over and work with you. You don't know that that's going to be the outcome of it.
Yeah.
So I feel till this day it's a nightmare. So I've done what I can up to this point. They came out to visit. His son has an affinity for German Shepherds.
Oh, even wow.
We went out.
Perfect.
Got them a dog, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Went out, to the same person that I have my Shepherds from. We went out there here, got him a dog. So they had a dog at home, whatever we could do, to try and help. And, I keep in touch with them. She sends me pictures of him as he's going through high school and stuff like that. Beautiful family. They're good people. Mike was an amazing guy. Every year, Memorial Day, Veterans Day comes around, that's my guy, so I still believe to this day, and many an occasion when things have happened, I still think that he was up there. He must have been looking out for me or something. So
he might have been, right?
Yeah.
Damn, that's fucking, I'm sorry for your loss, man. I can't imagine, I could only think, right? I never would be in your shoes. So I can't picture really technically what it'd be like. I could only imagine.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I think you were built for that. Like I said, I don't think everybody's built for that stuff emotionally. I clearly am not, but I think you were built for that. And there's a guy at work actually, a buddy of mine, a little younger than me. His name is Efrain. He's a Colombian kid. Great guy, brilliant kid. He kind of was a bit of a sheltered individual growing up. Really religious Colombian parents. You know how that goes. But he was a very nice kid, but very sheltered. And he ended up going in the Marines, the military, and one of his friends blew up via IED, if I'm pronouncing that right, IED. And it really fucked him up. And the one thing that I think is valuable about the military is it gives you a sense of order and organization and discipline, right? Some people come back from war and they can't get out of that funk. And when he came back, he kind of got hired at my job and he became a locomotive engineer because I work on the railroad. And he was very, very militant. Like, you knew he was in the military without even asking him and without even, needing to ask him about the military, because he was very militant, very, strict, whatever, the whole nine. But you could tell he was a little fucked up in the head because, him witnessing that, you could tell it destroyed him. And after the years went on, he kind of calmed down. Like, the further away he got from that situation, he kind of adjusted to the environment that he was in. He was able to get away from it. I know. Yeah, you never lose it.
Yeah, it stays with you. Yeah,
you never lose it.
Yeah.
But he's doing okay, thankfully. But just to hear his story, hear your stories,
right.
I couldn't imagine being in your shoes or his shoes. And that's why we have Veterans Day, right? To honor people such as yourself, and and that's probably when this episode's going to drop.
There you go.
Veterans Day has to. During your time in the military, what were the various personal ranks and specializations that you climbed?
I started as a private, and then I was a private E2. Then I was a private first class. I was a specialist. Then I was a corporal. And then I was a sergeant, and then I was a staff sergeant. So I literally hit every single rank from having no rank. Like, when I went in, I literally had no rank on my chest as a recruit. So some guys, if you have like college or stuff like that, like, you'll come in as an E2 and E3, you get a little extra pay. But I worked my way up all the way to staff sergeant. So, as a specialist, I was let me back myself up so I don't screw this up. Yes, as a specialist, that was pretty much my time through Iraq. I came back. I was still a specialist when I was at Fort Benning. When I was at Fort Benning, that's where I went to most of my training in schools. So I went to airborne school, air assault school, small unit leaders course, the warrior leaders course, and then I took the sergeant's test, and I was promotable. So I transferred from Georgia to New York. That's where I went to the 10th Mountain Division, who I went to Afghanistan with. When I arrived there, I was still wearing specialist rank, E4, and they were like, we don't even want guys to see you with that because you're promotable right now. So they made me a corporal the same day that I showed up there. They switched the rank out real quick.
Oh, wow.
And then I got promoted shortly after. When I was in Afghanistan, I went from sergeant to staff sergeant. So,
okay.
Yeah, so I was an E6 when I left the military.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I got a rough question to ask you. And you don't have to answer it. It's rather cliche when it comes to anybody thinking of somebody in the military and the whole nine. But obviously I'm asking you because I'm comfortable with you. I know you. I wouldn't ask a normal stranger on the street this question, but it's the one question that everybody has to ask. Somebody that was in law enforcement or the military, and oddly enough, you're in both, right? Have you ever actually killed somebody in battle? And if you're able to verbalize the experience, how did that moment affect you when it happened and years later that came?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, right? With that, the hard part for people to understand is that it depends on circumstance and kind of what you're doing. So in the infantry, a lot of times when we get into something, it's a lot of people shooting at once. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily there was never really an instance where it was just me, right? Like, every single time that something happened and you're engaging, everybody's kind of shooting at the same time. And at the end of it, there's people that are no longer standing on the other side. Yeah. I'm not laughing about this.
No,
it's just hard to talk about.
You have to, yeah.
Yeah, it's, so.
It's like a doctor doing surgery with somebody. They're going to laugh a little bit like, oh, what'd you eat for lunch?
Yeah. Again, there's nothing funny about it, but you know what I mean when I'm saying that is the aspect of, so there's a big commitment from one side to the other when something happens that, everybody's engaging, and the result of that is the aftermath. There's going to be people that are deceased on the other side. I personally, again, not to sound like I never really struggled with it, again, too, because again, those people are trying to hurt you. It's at the end of the day, it's going to be you or it's going to be them, right? Or them,
survival.
Yeah. So you're committed to that. What you're there to do. It's not like you're hurting somebody. You don't feel that to that same sense that you would, that you're not hurting somebody that's innocent. This person wants to do harm to you. So you're protecting yourself essentially.
Yeah.
So.
No, well, does
that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, and it goes along and it aligns with the man that I know who you are. You're very, like I said, you're very strong, and it's not like you're putting your emotions aside. It's just that you have a firm foundation, if you will. You're fit for the stuff that you're into. So, no, I appreciate you being open with me and sharing that with me.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I always tell everybody the same thing too. For us doing counterinsurgency, dead people don't talk, right? So like a lot of what we did was like, we were doing raids like in the middle of the night. It's like 3:00 in the morning and you're going into somebody's house under night vision, you're waking them up, right? And you're taking that person to collect information from them. Not to say that we're doing, nothing malicious, but like killing somebody in an environment like that, when it comes to trying to collect information for counterinsurgency, it doesn't help you. Like, the people are an asset to you. Like you want to keep that person so you can, who's the next guy? Who's the next guy? Who's the next guy? If that's your course of action on everything, like you're not going to really be able to collect much and progress.
That's fucking crazy.
A lot of what we were doing was like it was a lot of capture. Like it was a lot of going in and trying to take people into custody. So we, as far as, taking bodies was concerned, like we would, you'd go out at night and you'd round up sometimes a significant number of people.
Really?
Yeah. So
where two questions.
Yeah.
When you round up these people, where are you holding them? Are you holding them in your camp or your base, or at the location you capture them at? And I assume they don't even fucking speak English.
Yeah. So you have interpreters embedded. So you have local interpreters that are assigned to you. So you have somebody with you that speaks the native language. I actually got decent at the time at Arabic. Like I could understand most of it. I could reply on certain things. There was a certain time when I was in Iraq where I was living in the city, like in the police station. They would drop off a few of us and we literally stayed there.
Really?
Just like 3 guys. It was now again, like you want to talk about like looking back and being like, what was I thinking? It's like insane. Like you're literally like, there's nobody coming. Like it's just you and these guys like living there, and like a thin, interior door between you and everybody else, like just wild. But as far as where those people would go, it depended on how valuable they were.
Wow.
So
interesting.
If they were of high value, maybe they came with you. Medium value, maybe they went to the local police station. It depended on what the crime or the intel was associated with that person.
How would you know they're valuable? Is there like a military BOGO, if you will, or whatever you call it?
You know before you go out.
Okay.
We're not just throwing a dart, right? Like seeing where it lands. Like who you're going to get.
Like I said, forgive my ignorance.
No,
I'm just trying to get the deets.
I know
for these guys. The deets.
I know. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's pretty wild. So. I have kind of a loaded question here. I mean, I think every question I'm throwing at you is pretty fucking loaded, right? Okay. People are probably watching going, he's asking this fucking guy these questions. I love this guy. You don't get it.
Give me an easy question.
You don't get it. Yeah. So it's kind of 2 questions in one. Coming home, returning back from deployment, not done with the military yet, coming back from deployment for a short while, which is you'd return to base, right? Mm-hmm. Stateside. Which you'll be getting sent back to war again eventually. Mm-hmm. What were those brief breaks like for you during those times, knowing that this was only temporary and you're going to be getting sent back to the wolves, so to speak? Mm-hmm. And the second part to the question is, on the other hand, after all it's said and done and you come back home to the States, what was it like for you to get adjusted to the quote-unquote normal life again? As I would assume it's not only a major culture shock, but it'd be something that's very difficult to deal and cope with mentally as well as physically returning back home.
Mm-hmm. So coming back after the first deployment, I was again stationed in Hawaii, very hard. So when you're overseas, you're immersed in that environment, like you live there, that becomes like the norm for you every single day. Mentally, like you said, physically, emotionally, you're conditioned to that. And now you come back and you're just supposed to like kind of shut it off, right? So it's very hard for you to let your guard down.
Yeah.
Everywhere that you kind of go, like you're paying a little bit more attention than the average person would. I remember like the first time being in the car being back stateside again and like riding in the car, and I'm like watching everything that we're going past. Like you're paying attention to stuff that people probably wouldn't ever notice on the side of the road. It's like a level of paranoia with that. But it takes time. But again, like you're still in that environment. You're still constantly. As soon as you come back, there's no like rest period. Like it's like you're just getting ready to go back again. So they keep you in that mindset. They're constantly conditioning you and training you to send you back. Get like a little break. I think it was like 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Oh, that's nothing,
back. Yeah, you come back to Jersey, hang out, whatever it is. And then it was like right back to work. You're right back at the range. You're practicing building clearing. You're practicing convoys. You're practicing whatever it is that you're doing, air assault operations. You're flying around in helicopters. Like, you have your weekend, maybe some time on the weekend to do something. You're in the field. So that's the thing too. Like the schedule with the military when you're on active duty, it's not like a regular Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Like there was times where I was gone for a month, 2 months at a time.
Wow.
They send you somewhere to go for training and you're just living in it the whole time. So you never necessarily get like a real break from it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, man. From the outside looking in, right. It seems to me that the care for our veterans or lack thereof is absolutely atrocious. Now, like I said, again, this is from the outside looking in. From a normal civilian, the lack of care for our veterans, when they touch down after going to war, whether it be, mental stability and getting them the proper, therapy and job placement and stuff like that. Because let's be real here, a lot of them become drug addicts. There's tons of suicide runs rampant among our veterans. What's your opinion on how veterans are treated in this country? And do you agree with, that it needs a major overhaul and attention?
Yeah, I do. I think you can always do better.
Yeah.
I think we can always do better. I think that there's been a shift probably in the last few years. Like there's more focus and attention on trying to fix the problem. I think that we're really late to the game. Again, looking at the number of people that were coming back from the global war on terror, there's been a little lull in conflict now. It's not to say that there's not people that are deployed. There's always people that are in harm's way. Right now there's guys that are still in Iraq, right? That are still overseas, different places doing stuff. But the bulk of the global war on terror, those traditional deployments that were going on, like those guys that came back, it was very disorganized on like how to treat these people and, how to address it and what to do with them, which I think did result in a lot of the suicides and everything that we've seen. It continues till today. But I think that, I know the VA's made some changes, like they're trying to fix stuff and they're trying to open up more services. And even again, not to jump into the next segment, but like I know as being a police officer, right? Like there's many a time where we would be dealing with somebody who was a veteran and they're like, "Hey, Justin, can you help us with this?" Right? Like you kind of understand this, right? Like, and I'm like, "Come on, let's go." Like I can. So making sure that people are aware of what the resources out there. Like it's not to say that it wasn't there, but it's just nobody really knows how to deal with this. It's a different breed. It's a different breed of person that you're dealing with. So the traditional mental health services aren't really designed to deal, or not. I don't want to say deal, to service somebody that's been through that type of trauma.
Yeah. I think personally that it should be mandatory that all veterans should be given free, therapy and psychiatric help because. I mean, let's be real here, man. I think it's healthy for any normal person, let alone somebody that came back from war, to have a therapist. I mean, I fucking wish I had the time to have one myself, dude. This right here, this podcast is my therapy. Yeah. It is my way, my outlet to tell people my emotions and give them an insight to who I am internally a little bit, right? Obviously, I have a different guest like you. You're the highlight of today. But I'll sprinkle myself. I'll sprinkle. I'll do a little sprink.
Yeah, man.
I'll do a little sprink. But whatever. I mean, but that's the reality of it. And I enjoy doing this because I like to be vulnerable. I like to show who I am and I like to hear who you are. But I think that hopefully I can find some time to do it. Hopefully, I'm sure I could squeeze it. I don't do Zooms.
Right. You need the real face to face is what we're doing here. Yeah,
that's what I need. I want to feel your energy leaping across this fucking over the ice bucket,
right,
into my mouth. Pause. You know what I mean?
Sorry, I'm kicking stuff
into my mouth. But jokes aside, I think it's very important. So I'm actually kind of interested on your personal experience when you returned back. You were done. You're like, that's it. I'm actually coming home. How was it for you to actually adjust to normal life, because you're over there for however many fucking years and you come back, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's comparable to just going to Cuba, because it's like you go over there, it's like still the 1950s, but you come over here after being over there, not only has technology advanced incredibly, exponentially rather, but just life in general, the way things, like, you probably came back and like online dating was like the new thing. You're like, what the fuck is this? So what was it like for you to transition, finding work, being able to just get your mind out of that hectic, chaotic war environment? What was it like for your personal experience?
Leaving the military entirely.
Yeah. What was that like for you?
The hardest part is, or okay, shouldn't say is, for me, was the aspect that, like, I'm a staff sergeant. I'm in a reconnaissance unit. I have an immense amount of responsibility. I'm responsible for thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of equipment.
Yeah.
Other people's lives. Like, you have the rank that you've worked really hard for. You have all this training that you've been through that you're kind of identified by in the military. And then you come out and you're a guy with a resume. And that's it. Like, so like the first job that I got, and thank God the guy, you know, he hired me. I worked for K Street Group, was a private security company. Bob Armando is the owner of the company. Great guy. Like, went in there for an interview. I'm like, look, I just got out of the military. Like, can you help me out? You know, gave me a position doing like unarmed security. So I went from like doing this like high risk, you know, job overseas, counterinsurgency, you know, recon, like all this stuff. And he helped me work up. But again, like you start out and it's like doing security in a retail store.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I just went from that to like, and I'm not demoralizing that. Like, look, it's an important job. You have responsibility, but at the same time, like, it's a huge difference in what you're doing there. So like mentally, like, it's like, okay, like, I just got to keep working at this. I got to keep working at this. So my brother-in-law is a police officer too. And he made the suggestion. He's like, look, get into dispatching. You know what I mean? Like, look at maybe doing that. Start your pension time for law enforcement. So I shifted and like was kind of doing both at the same time. So yeah, again, I don't want to leap too far forward, but that's the hardest part, like career-wise, coming out, is like you go from being what you would, you know, classify as being like relatively important in your community, being, you're like, what can I, you know, where can I work? Like, what can I do to make money? You know, so I worked with Dan too. Actually, we were talking about him before.
Shout out Steady. I seen him last week, baby.
The first job that I had was working with Dan. I did construction with him.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Dan's the best, bro.
Awesome. Yeah. So
dude,
he hired me right
crazy.
away. Yeah, he's like, you can be the demolition guy because you just came back from overseas. So he handed me a sledgehammer and I was taking walls down. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Like him and Eric. Shit. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You know, it's a good time, but it's hard. You know, you work very, very hard to establish yourself, and you have all these accomplishments, and you come out and they don't really mean much.
That's a fucking crime, man. Yeah. That's a fucking, the amount of, I mean, I don't want to get too far into the present day, but like the amount of money they're fucking throwing at Ukraine and all this shit. Like, you would probably know more on those topics than I, but it just seems like the amount of focus on our veterans and the people that really matter to us the most. I mean, let's be real here. You're giving and risking your life to this country, and then you come back after going through a situation that could potentially ruin your life forever. You come back from that, and it's just like, oh, this guy, this fucking guy. That's fucking insane, dude. That's an absolute fucking crime. I mean, I don't even know if anything could be done to fix that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this country is so far gone as a whole. I don't even know if there's a fix to that. I mean, well, there is. I don't know if there's going to be any motive to do that. You know what I mean? And it makes me sad, man, you know, especially, you know, I mean, luckily you're strong. Like, not everybody has the strength that you possess. So it's like they come back and they're fucked up. I mean, look, I'm a train conductor, right? I work on the railroad, and I bring a lot of veterans. There's a veteran hospital in, what is it, Lyons? Right?
Yeah.
So I bring tons of dudes over there, wheelchairs, not wheelchairs, this and that. And some of them look fine, but some of them look fucked up, dude. And it's just like, I look at them and I just feel sorry. You know what I mean? I never grab their ticket. I don't give a fuck. You know, go ahead, you're good with me. But it's just like, it's a sad environment that, like, and a sad reality that, like, this we have. And I hope there's a way that we can not only make it better for you know, the sake of your colleagues or whatever, you know, if that's even the proper terminology to talk about your fellow soldiermen, you know. But it's just sad, man, you know. I don't know. Hopefully there's something we could do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully. One thing that's interesting that I want to ask you is, I know that you always loved military movies. Always.
Yeah.
You always did. Now, me personally, I'm a big fan of cinema. I'm not really particularly into war movies, but I appreciate some of them. And you always loved the movie Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
That was always one of your favorite movies of all time. After going to war, going to Iraq, going to Afghanistan, going through all the life-altering experiences that you did, are you able to watch those movies now, and how much different do they hit you when you experience them? Or do you choose to not even experience them anymore at all?
I don't really mess with them.
Yeah.
Same with even law enforcement movies and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because I've been in it. You know what I mean? It's just not to say that it doesn't capture my attention, but I don't know. I remember watching it. It didn't hit the same after. I remember the first time I saw it. I remember seeing the movie that we'll use Black Hawk Down as the example, right?
Yeah.
75th Ranger Regiment, Delta Force, 10th Mountain Division, super intense movie. Seeing it in the theater. I remember walking out of the theater and being like, oh yeah, I want to go. This is what I want to do,
Yeah.
So, and then watching it afterwards, I guess, maybe you do have more of an appreciation for what they're trying to depict in those experiences. I was never in the Battle of Mogadishu. You know what I mean? That's a very particular intense, battle that took place there, and that type of intense fighting is something that those guys only will understand. Very different from what I did while I was in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just sometimes it can be a little much.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't. I don't know. I could imagine it'd be definitely a different experience the second time around, especially because I would assume it would trigger flashbacks or something, of that nature. But however, even though you don't watch them anymore and this and that, more for the sake of the viewers and stuff, coming from somebody that went there, did it, right? You would have a different critique, if you will, regarding military movies. So what is some of your favorite military movies of all time, besides Black Hawk Down?
Saving Private Ryan.
I love that.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Fuck Heath.
Yeah. Saving Private Ryan. Another. I like all the infantry ones,
Yeah.
That's a good one. Trying to think. I mean, there's all the typical ones. Enemy at the Gates. There's all these different ones. But Black Hawk Down was always the one that if I watched it on repeat, that was it. It's the one that I watched the most. And then even with Saving Private Ryan, there's the one scene where the two guys are fighting and the one guy's standing right, and I'm like, that'll come on, and I'm like, I just changed the channel. I'm like, I can't watch it. Again, not because I'm having a flashback, but just because I'm like, this is too much.
It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
I love cinema. I always have. I've been a big fan of it. I love independent films. I love documentaries. But horror movies is probably my main thing. But I never was really into military movies, like I told you. Saving Private Ryan though was always, and I actually saw Hacksaw Ridge. When it came out. That movie
I haven't seen it in ages, but I know the movie.
That movie's bonkers. Loved it. I thought it was great. Like I said, you probably can't watch it, but me, from a person who doesn't even like military movies, seeing that and liking it probably to you listening translates a lot, because I don't like those type of movies. They're not really something that gets me off, if you will. But I recently discovered a film that it's more so not a recommendation to you, because you probably are not going to see it because obviously your scenario. But it's more for the viewers out there to watch. It's a movie called Come See Me. Have you ever heard of it? So it's a Russian movie. It was done by a Russian director, and it's an anti-Soviet Union war film. It focuses on Nazi Germany and the occupation of Belarus in Eastern Europe. It taps into the perspective and the witness accounts of a boy named Fiora, but I think it's spelt like Fleora, like fly aura, but I believe it's pronounced Fiora, and he joins resistance fighters, if you will, in the forest and stuff like that, and it just really showcases the war atrocities and the horror that was World War II, and it's a pretty brutal film. It's pretty controversial. And, I like to watch trailers and stuff, and I never heard of it until last year. And it's still on my list. I haven't watched it yet, but I've watched particular scenes and reviews on it. And from the little that I saw, it looks absolutely fucking fantastic. From the cinematography to the thing is that what makes it so controversial, I think, is the hyper realism in it. You know, when you watch a film and the director does such a good job in conjunction with the cinematographer and the actors and what he's able to direct and bring out of the actors, that it looks so real and feels so real. Like, I've never been to war, but when you watch this movie, it feels like you're there. Like, I'm talking to the part of where explosions happen, right? And then what happens? You get a ping in your ear, right? I guess that's like what I wouldn't know, but that's like the assumption, right? That ping, the way he depicts that, it's like it truly feels like you're really there. And you know, the director originally, there's a kid who plays Fiora, and the director originally tried to put him under hypnosis because he was a young kid and he didn't want to traumatize him. So what his goal was, I don't know what it was he was thinking, was to put the kid under hypnosis so that he would be able to cope with playing the role, almost like put him under a trance to act out the role, take him out of the hypnosis, and he'd be okay. But the truth of the matter is he never took to the hypnosis. So the film still went on. And it kind of traumatized the kid, as I read, like later on in life. But there's a lot of really weird and interesting shots where it's a frontal view of the subject, right? So it'd be like the subject, which is Fiora, or the other characters would be looking somewhere at a situation, and the horror, it kind of trickles back to what you and I were talking about when you got in the infantry and you got with these guys. And you saw this look on their face.
Yeah, the expression,
The expression. The expression this guy captures of this kid's face is fucking horrifying. Even though it's horrifying, even though I only saw scenes, it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. So I know you won't see it. This is more of a glorified exaggeration for the viewers. Come and see me, 1985. Insane. But I'm excited to watch it. I know you. I'm sorry. I know it's not your thing, but it's fucking absolutely bonkers. So anyway, you're a police officer. Let's be real here. You've been for a while now. When did you become a police officer? You were there, first of all. You became a Verona police. You started out dispatching, as you said. Then you became a Verona police officer, and you were there for almost 8 years, correct?
Yeah, 8 years. Yeah, it's about 8 years. Yeah.
How'd that whole thing happen?
So when I came out of the military, like I said before, I was doing the security stuff. I actually worked for Glenridge Police as a dispatcher. I was
you were at Glenridge?
Yeah.
That beautiful small town.
Yeah, I was there for, it might have been about a year. I think between Glenridge and Verona, it was about a year. I was taking the civil service test. So to become a police officer in New Jersey, you take the test and then you have to wait for the results to come out. So I did like the prep class, took the test. I'm waiting for the results to come out. So I was dispatching in Glenridge. Then Verona brought me on full-time dispatching for them. So I was working the desk. The results came out. I was number 1 on the list. I got offered the job. I got hired. And I went to Essex County Police Academy on Grove. So, you know, we used to see all the recruits running up and down. And I was like one of the recruits running up and down.
Yeah. Two things on that. First of all, of course, you were number 1.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, the veterans. So that's one thing we were talking about before with the veteran stuff. That was one thing. So being a combat veteran, it helps you. You get bumped. So I scored a 97.38 on the test.
Beautiful.
So the other guy that I got hired with, phenomenal cop too, like very, very smart. You know, he moved up through the ranks already. He's moving up pretty quick. And you know, so his score was actually higher than mine, but me being a combat veteran,
boasted you.
It put me at number 1.
Well, I mean, to be honest, rightfully
I still got a good score, so he can relax. Like,
fuck him.
He can relax. Yeah.
Fuck him in the ass. No. Sorry, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I did decent. Yeah.
You did decent.
Yeah.
So after you took your test and you did all that, how did you like being a cop in Verona during the time that you were there?
It was good.
Because I guess that was your first experience on being a police officer in general, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, you know, it's the town that you grew up in.
Yeah.
So you're running into a lot of people that you know. I mean, I enjoyed my time there. I was very fortunate. They were very good to me the whole time that I worked there. Like they let me do a lot of stuff and go to a lot of training, and I was involved in a lot of things. I went to, firearms instructor. I was doing medical training for them. I just know for myself, again, like I just had different aspirations for what I wanted to do in law enforcement, but you can't ever take away the value of being in patrol.
Yeah.
Right. Like being a patrolman is like, that's it. Like there's a lot to be said for that experience, responding to calls, going to calls for service, going to accidents, going to fires, going to car accidents. Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, all the different stuff that you respond to, you build your foundation in law enforcement doing that type of work. So Verona's a nice town, right? Like it's a nice town overall. There's definitely stuff that happens there that, like we've never, growing up, like I would have never imagined, like I'd be like standing there, when I was working there and I'm looking back at being a kid and my perspective of like what the Verona police did is completely different. Like you're like, oh wow, like they do a little bit more than I thought. So yeah, you kind of have to see it for yourself. But again, it's a nice mix. Like it's a nice town. The people who live there are good people, but you get your stuff now and again.
It's funny that you bring that up because being that you were a cop in Verona, right? It's one of the nicest, like, I guess you can call it a Pleasantville, if you will, right? And the overall consensus when it comes to police officers is like the suburban guys get paid the most, but do the least, and the urban guys get paid shit, but have to deal with the most, right? And that goes even across teaching departments like that. You become a teacher in the hood. You got to deal with all this fucking bullshit. You don't get paid as much. The teachers in general don't get paid a lot, but the ones in the suburbs get a little better treatment, whatever. But I would assume, like you just said, that there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than most people in general assume, right? And that realize. So it's probably a lot, just much different issues. Not that it's the same type of dealings, but you probably deal with a lot more of different stuff than people would expect. Probably a lot more domestic issues, probably a lot more burglaries because, people in the suburbs have a lot nicer things. So there are probably a lot more robberies and drug addiction because let's be real, a lot of rich kids like to get high, right? So they have a lot more access to money, so they'll be able to buy stuff easier. Especially living in Verona, you're a hop, skip, and a jump from Patterson and Newark. So you can get there, get the drugs you need to get, blah, blah, blah. But most of the time, when you're a cop in the suburbs, you're on your own, right? Whereas other districts like Newark and Patterson, now, even though we'll talk about this later, nowadays, everywhere is understaffed. But let's talk about a time when there was a plethora of officers in the suburbs, in these towns like Verona. The manpower was a lot lower, and in the urban areas it was a lot higher, which would kind of also gauge the different wage difference, right? And it's just a different environment. So when you came, you just said kind of you realized that, but when you went to Verona, what were, if you can, because I know as a police officer you can't really expose and talk about a lot of it, but what was the realization for you when you became a cop there? Because maybe when you first got hired, you thought it wasn't going to be, it was going to be a little more sunny in Philadelphia, if you will. What was it like, again, when you went there? And what made you realize that this isn't as easy as people think?
Yes. I mean, anytime you go to a critical incident, right? You go to a call where there's a violent person there.
Yeah.
Somebody that wants to do harm to you, wants to do harm to others, you know. You don't think that stuff happens as much. Again, like you really don't think about that much growing up. Like, that type of stuff's happening in your town. It still does. Like you're getting people from first time you chase a car. You know what I mean? Like chasing after a car. You're trying to catch this person. Like, there's no difference between where. It doesn't matter where you're doing that. Chasing a car is chasing a car.
Of course.
Dealing with somebody who's armed is dealing with somebody who's armed. Whether you work in whatever town it is, or the frequency and I think the intensity is what people get hung up on. That obviously, if you work, you work someplace where there the crime rate is higher, you're going to deal with that more.
Yeah, of course.
Right, but also you're going to be asked working in a smaller town. There was a lot of times where you went on calls that you went like the extra 10 miles with things, right? To try and help somebody and solve problems with them and do things. Like you really got invested in trying to fix things, more than you would be able to if you were just moving on to the next call. So the quality of service that you were able to give, I guess you could say, is different. It's not a knock on anybody.
Yeah.
But just you're able to invest more time in it. So you're putting more work into trying to fix that problem than you may be able to if you work someplace where it's like, hey, we need you at the next call. We need you at the next call. You know?
Of course.
So
as a police officer, I know you can't legally probably share a lot, but in the hopes that you can share something, what are some moments that you received during a call or a dispute that was really an eye-opener for you in your career as a police officer that kind of was like, whoa, this shit is fucking real?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple instances with people that were armed, you know, whether it be with a firearm or be with an edged weapon, you know, so that's a realization. Again, I'd already dealt with it in the military. You know,
that's true.
So like,
that's true.
It's a complete, like for me, like at that point already, not to say like nothing is routine. Nothing is routine. Like there's no such thing as routine patrol, you know. But like at that point, like I was already, it's like this is what we do, right? Like you're already kind of conditioned into it. Like the person's in front of me, and I'm like, okay, fine. Like what can we do to de-escalate this?
Yeah.
You know, so I've been very lucky. Like my whole career, like any time that I've encountered something like that, I've either been able to get the person into custody or gotten them to, you know, surrender or drop the weapon or whatever it is without having to hurt anybody, which is awesome. You know what I mean? That's a great accomplishment, obviously. But I think that like it's probably, it wouldn't even be those calls. Like it's not necessarily the crime calls. It's probably more the accidents. So like fatalities, going to fatalities, like stuff like that. Like it's just, it sucks. You know what I mean? It's sad. Like, you know, seeing, you know, it's the whole aspect of being on. Yeah, I guess that's where it would lie without me venturing too far down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Now, I was always curious of this, right? Being a cop in general is probably one of the hardest jobs, regardless of what anybody may think, that any of us could ever have. I sure as hell never would want to be a cop. You know, and there's a problem because when the people obtain power, we're humans, right? Human nature. When humans obtain power, the vast majority don't know how to deal with said power. So a lot of people tend to abuse it. I don't know what that quote is. Power corrupts. Whatever that quote is. And it rings true through and throughout. You know, everybody assumes every cop is a jerk off. That's not the case. Being a cop is one of the hardest jobs. I don't fucking ever want to do it. Never have a desire to. So, you know, I always will tip my hat to especially a good officer. Now, there's a lot of cops that tend to, like I said, abuse power. There's a lot of corruption that goes on, especially in the urban environments. I personally know a lot of Patterson cops. I'm not going to say any name. I know a lot that are good, but I've witnessed a lot of crazy, questionable shit from them. So that always kind of skewed my view on police officers, right? But let's be real. Humans are humans. And we react in our own ways. Just because we have a title doesn't mean it changes the fact that we're a human. So there's good cops and there's bad cops, just like there's good fucking, you know, potato fryers and there's bad potato fryers. There's good moppers and there's bad moppers. We're humans. But the one thing I could say about you is I know deep within my heart you're absolutely through and through a good cop.
Thank you.
You're one of the good guys. So being that I know that, I value not only your words, but I'm excited and exhilarated to show the viewers and listeners your words because I know they're true.
Yeah.
I don't want to present anything that's fraudulent.
Right.
You know what I mean? So with that being said, being a cop is a tough job. You gotta take a lot home with you. You know, you got to navigate through life. And then you already were there. You were in the military. So it's like you're coming from one fucking tough place to another, right? So it's like one thing after another. Being that law enforcement's a tough gig, I want to know what it was like for you during the George Floyd era. Because not only was the George Floyd era the quote-unquote George Floyd era, but it was during the pandemic. And a lot of crazy, life-altering, permanent changes happened to not only us as humans, but us as a society. And from a political standpoint, everything changed during that time period. And we're still trying to adapt to the changes it made. Being a cop during that era was probably one of the most fucking difficult things that anybody could deal with. And a lot of people forget that. They just see cops, you're bad because one guy made a bad decision. But you forget that there's a lot of good cops out there. Being that you're one of them, what was the George Floyd era, quote unquote, like for you?
It was tough. It was hard. I worked a lot of protests during that time, and to hear the way that people talk to you, and that like at the end of the day, like I don't want to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? Like I genuinely care about people, right? Like I want to help. Like I've always gone out of my way to try and do everything. And you're just kind of labeled as somebody that, is associated. And again, like it's atrocious.
Yeah.
So I guess to a certain point, like you understand people, of course you understand people's frustration and their anger and stuff like that. But it definitely like, it kind of throws you through a loop. Like you're like, what are we doing? Like you come here every single day and you're doing everything that you can to try and help people, and you do the right thing, and but at the same time, like even with that, I remember going to work these protests and people are angry at me, and my soul, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, like my sole objective and purpose was, how do I keep them safe? Right? Like you're just like watching, scanning, like paying attention. Like we're not there. Like you do your thing. You know what I mean? Like that's your right to protest and do what you want to do. And like my concern was always like, just don't let anybody hurt the crowd. Right? Yeah. Like you're like constantly paying attention to vehicles and other people that are around and making sure that, it doesn't turn into something where people get hurt. So like you just have to, again, just like I said with the military before, like the mission comes first. Like you stay focused on what am I here to do? I'm not here to share my opinion. I'm not here to get my emotions involved. Yeah. Like, like I know who I am and I know what I do every single day. And I'm going to work even harder now to try and prove that to people and show people that like, look, there's a lot of really good people out there that do want to help and do want to do the right thing. But right now, my job is to keep you safe, right? And prevent, something from happening there. Anytime you have a large and this is like the mind frame of somebody that really does this stuff every single day, right? Like I have a large gathering of people. You know what I mean? Like my job is to keep you safe. Like that's it at the end of the day. Like even if you're not happy with me, I want to make sure that you get home. Yeah. So
yeah, I could only imagine, man, because seeing what was covered on the news. And I guess that's another topic, right? Like, it's like certain stuff is thrown down your throat purposely and by design, and you don't know who to trust, who to this. I mean, that's a totally different podcast in itself, but I could only imagine being an actual cop, being an actual good cop, because that to me is important. It must have been very tough to navigate through those times, especially you must have felt restricted, right? Because all these laws came in place, and it's like you couldn't. They were preventing you from doing your job, right? You couldn't apprehend people the way you might have normally would when they were threatening you with a certain device or an apparatus or whatever. Because you're like, shit, am I going to be fucking filmed in a cell phone? Am I going to be labeled as racist? Am I going to be labeled as this? So listen, I don't fucking envy you. I don't want your job. And, it must have been a tough time for you.
If you follow the rules and you do what you're supposed to do, you'd be fine.
Bingo.
Bingo. If you tell me I can do this and I can't do that, then I can only do this and I can't do that. Yeah. I was a fan of the body-worn cameras when they came out. Yeah. I'm a fan of them. And I still, to this day, I love it.
Yeah, they're good.
It because it's all right there. Yeah. At the end of the day, go ahead. Turn the screen around. This is what happened. Like, there's no questioning it. There's no going back and forth. And if you're doing the right thing, you have nothing to worry about.
If you do your fucking job, you have nothing to worry about.
It's not personal. Like, this is what I can do, and this is what I can't do. And as long as you stay between those parameters, at the end of the day, you'll be fine.
Yeah, totally.
So
now, I know during that time period and shortly after, cops were dropping like flies. They just didn't want to do it anymore. Left. Did you?
Yeah, I thought about it because I had the business. I'm like, maybe I'll just go do this, and not because I had any feelings about, like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore because people don't like me. Like, it wasn't like I had, I wanted to leave it, but it's just like, maybe I'll switch, I'll transition, I'll do this instead. Yeah. Like, so if there was any time where that was going to happen, it would be around then. Yeah. It definitely went through my head. I'll say that much, right?
Yeah, of course. But I saw that a lot of cops were, especially in New York, they were fucking dropping like flies, man. They were dropping. I mean,
big attrition. Yeah. Huh? Big attrition. A lot of people left. Yeah.
Yeah. When there's one thing that I always was curious about, like I said, I'm asking you this shit because I'm comfortable with you. When you first became a police officer, right? One of the parts of the job is pulling people over. Me thinking about it seems like a fucking horrible task, right? But I'm trying to think about it from your, through your lens. When you pull somebody over, you have no idea who that person is. Mm-hmm. You don't know what they're capable of. You don't know what they have on them, whether it's a weapon, anything. Now, I am hip to this. I'm privy to this. I understand this. So when I get pulled over, I don't, 10 to 2, whatever. Everybody has their own rules. I turn the ignition off, hands on my knees. I don't even grab my fucking license or nothing until they tell me to, right? That's just how I was brought up. It's very simple. It's a very simple mode of operation, but a lot of people don't understand that. And during this time period, a lot of people were abusing power and doing wild shit, or there was a lot of people that were getting pulled over doing the craziest shit to not do what I'm telling you and to just be angry or to be an opportunistic jerk off, if you will. However, being a cop in general, when you pull somebody over, you don't know any of this stuff yet until you have the interaction, right? I always envisioned that walk from exiting the cop car to getting to the side of their window is like fucking death row. Regardless if it's, you don't know if it's an old lady, you don't know nothing. So when you first became a cop, I'm just curious on your perspective as a police officer, because I want to give the viewers a perspective that they'd never probably gotten from anybody. They just have an outside perspective. What was it like? I mean, it might not be glamorous as I'm making it, but what was it like for you when you first pulled somebody over? What was it like for you? How nervous were you or whatever the case may be, or were you not at all?
I'm going to ruin it for you again. I'd already been doing it, man. So I guess if I was to back it up to the military, you know what I mean? We would do interdictions on vehicles and stuff like that. Yeah. So walking up to cars, it wasn't, I was comfortable with me, right? Gotcha. Like I'm comfortable with me. If you're comfortable with yourself and again, like I said before, like you're gonna play a part. So obviously that person, there's free will, right, to a certain extent on how they're gonna conduct themselves. But you do have a certain level of say setting the tone on how that interaction is gonna go. If you're dealing with somebody who's relatively even keel, you know what I mean? So like my spiel is the same every time. Yeah, every time that I walk up to the car, like I'm not trying to be like a tough guy with anybody. Like I introduce myself. This is my name. This is who I work for. Just everything's being recorded right now. Can I see your paperwork? Like this is why I stopped you. Like I'm not going to argue with you. Like right off the bat, we get into what the reason is for the stop. Have I seen people do wacky stuff? Sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. It happens. Like, and again, sometimes people are confused. They don't, they don't know whatever the reason may be that they do what they do. But overall, again, I've been very fortunate for the number of car stops that I've done in my career. Most of them have been pretty seamless. I like to think that most people are just like you know what I mean? Like they're just going to work, they're coming home. Maybe they forgot to renew their registration or whatever it is, but you do have to be prepared for that other percentage, where things aren't going to turn out the way that you expected them to. So
of course
you can come into it. And again, you can be polite and you can do all that stuff and still protect yourself at the same time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's the thing is like communication is everything. Communication is everything as a police officer, as a fucking grocery bagger, as a husband. Communication is key across the board, right? So if you know how to communicate with people, then you're okay.
You can get a lot done.
Yeah.
You can get a lot done.
You can get a lot done.
Right.
So now, to my understanding, being a police officer, I believe with the Verona Police Department, you sustained an injury. What exactly happened during that situation? How did you obtain said injury?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go too far into the details of the call because it's still, it's still relatively.
No, whatever you can. If you can't, you can't.
Yeah, but basically, in the midst of trying to help somebody, I messed up my lower back, my middle back. Some of that injury again too. Years of being in the military, but that was definitely like the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess you could say, right? So I wound up sustaining an injury there. Things didn't necessarily get better. Tried to work on it, like back and forth chiropractor, that type of stuff, and it wound up being a bigger issue down the road. But it was a lower back injury, and then it turned up being my middle back as well.
Oh wow! So you ended up actually having to get surgery. What kind of surgery did you actually need?
L1, 2, 3, 4, 5, S1, S2. Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
So was it kind of like a fusion surgery?
Yeah,
or?
a fusion, and they did a discectomy on my back too.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so I was out of work for a few months for that. And again, like I said, like the injury happened. I wound up going back to work, was trying to kind of treat it. And, you're wearing all this equipment all the time. And life goes on. You keep doing stuff. And then it's just progressively deteriorated until it gave out.
Well, what's kind of remarkable that I know from your surgery is after you got it, you weren't expected to walk for how long?
Oh, it was supposed to be a while. Yeah. It was supposed to. I don't remember exactly how long they said it was, but I know that it was a long time.
And how long did it take you to walk in?
A week. Yeah.
A week.
Yeah, it was a week, yeah.
That's that always looking forward mentality.
Yeah. A week. Yeah.
A fucking week.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
God bless you, bro.
Thank you.
God fucking bless you, man.
Yeah.
One thing that's really interesting about your career is now I'm kind of leading into, we all know you're a volunteer firefighter, volunteer first responder. You've been doing this shit forever. It's a fucking laundry list of the things that you do and keep busy, right? But what I really find interesting is the canine thing, because that seemed to take the main haul of everything you have. It takes up the majority. So you were a police officer with Verona up until 2022. Why did you leave?
So I started my business in 2018. Even before that, like even when I was in the military, being in reconnaissance, we had dogs attached to us. Even when I was in Iraq, like in the infantry, like you worked with dog teams a lot. I was not a handler. But we had dog teams attached to us a lot. And I'm like, oh man, I want to do that. I'm like, I love that. Yeah. The funny part is that when I got out of the Army, only some people know this, I came up on orders to be a handler right after I signed the paperwork to get out.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm done. That's it. I'm going to get out. I remember sitting there talking with my wife. I'm going to move on, get a career in law enforcement. Everything was said and done. I signed the paperwork to leave. And it was later that week, I was in packing my stuff, my locker, emptying my stuff out.
Wow.
And they came in, they're like, "Where's Staff Sergeant Nielsen at?" They're like, "Oh, he's over there." Guy came around the corner. He's like, "Hey, he came up on orders. They're starting these dog teams for overseas or something." Somebody said that you're a dog guy. And I'm like, well, I've already signed up. At that point, I was like, I'll just do it as a police officer, right? I'm going into a career field where I'll be able to do it. So, again, working for Verona, very fortunate, nice town, good department, great people. They took good care of me there. They didn't have a canine program. It was very fortunate that they gave me permission to work the dog outside, and I was doing training and stuff like that outside of being a police officer. But I wanted to do both in the same place. I wanted to do. I'm working in a career field where I can have a dog if I'm in the right spot. So an opportunity came up for me to interview at the department that I'm at now, and they offered me a position, with the sheriff's office there, and they have a canine unit. So I left Verona and I went down to the sheriff's office, and I've been in the canine unit ever since.
Oh, interesting. So that's how you got your start in the canine industry. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. Now, when you're in the canine unit, you actually keep that dog with you, if I'm not mistaken.
I have 4. German Shepherds.
4.
Yeah, 4. 2 that go to work with me and 2 that live at home.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So is that normal practice for a canine officer, that you take the dog, you keep them home with you in your everyday life?
Yeah, it depends on where you work. For I would say for most local or sheriff's office, you're going to take the dogs with you, because if something comes in, we're responding a lot of times from home. Yeah. So you have the dogs with you. If they were at a kennel facility or something like that, you'd have to drive from home to go get the dog to then respond to wherever the call is.
Okay.
So they live with us, so that way if something comes in while we're off duty and we need to respond, you literally take the dog with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you something when it comes to involving canine training and stuff of that nature. Is there a particular certification or a license that you need to be able to train a dog? Or is this something that just comes along with the job? Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to your background and experience more so than a particular piece of paper. Okay. Right? So there's no it's not like you're getting a license, right, to become a dog trainer in the state of New Jersey. Hypothetically, yes, anybody could go out tomorrow and say that they are one. But it's not really a career. The reason why it's been able to sustain as long as it is because it's not really something where you can fake it till you make it. Yeah. Right? You either know what you're doing or you don't. Proof is in the pudding. If you don't know what you're doing, most likely people are going to find out. You know what I mean? It's going to wind up kind of coming to fruition on its own. You don't really have to do too much there. So in order for me having the facility, I have a kennel license,
right? Like there's certain licensing that I have to have with the health department because we have dogs in the facility. But me as an individual trainer, I did an apprenticeship under somebody else. Like that person taught me, right? My background and experience going through the canine academies obviously contributed greatly. I've gone to a ton of classes. I have lots of certificates, right, that are up around the walls, but there's no one particular one that says, Justin's a dog trainer.
They just help boost what you already are.
Yeah, it's you're anybody who's in any career field should constantly be trying to learn and go to different classes, and there's the dog training there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot more. It's not just sits and downs, is what I tell people.
Of course, yeah.
Right? There's a lot that goes into that. So and it depends on which disciplines you're talking about as well.
So I know, like when it comes to, I know I'm jumping a little bit of ahead, but your true love comes shortly after this, which is the business that you currently own that is blowing up to this beautiful, popular, incredible establishment, Cover Canine Training.
Yep.
How much different is training canine for law enforcement in comparison to training house pets?
It's pretty different. Yeah. So the big thing to understand with that is the selection process, right? What we're looking for in a dog that has the capabilities to work versus a canine companion that somebody has at home. So I always tell everybody, like, just because you have a German Shepherd doesn't mean that dog is designed to do the tasks associated with a working dog.
Yeah.
So, and even amongst, those breeds, right, there's going to be certain dogs that may have capabilities to do one thing and another, so that's really kind of what it comes down to. The other thing to understand too is that dog training is, regardless of whether it's like going to the canine academy or it's coming to me as a client, it's the person, not the dog. Right. So like me going through the academy, the dog learns stuff super quick.
Yeah.
Right. Most of your effort and energy as an instructor should be going into training the person. The dogs are fairly fast at learning this stuff. So even with us, like when clients come in, it's the truth. Yeah. So if the dog has what it takes, like you're good. You know what I mean? Like you can work with them, but most of that is for the person more so than it is the dog, is teaching the person to understand and read the behavior. Not everybody understands that. So, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, because that's half the battle, right? You need, not only do you train the dog, you got to train the person who owns the dog,
right?
Stuff like that. That's interesting. You've developed a large staff.
Mm-hmm.
You've had multiple locations, which you recently joined into one. For the most part, you still are hanging on to the one for whatever reasons,
right?
But combining two locations into one beautiful spot. When you started, it was just you, but eventually the load must have gotten a little too big to bear. How hard is it hiring somebody that you can trust to represent not only your brand, but that you can trust will actually do the job that needs to be done?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely made some mistakes, right, along the way. So,
we're humans.
Yeah, it happens. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying when it comes to personnel, luckily to date, like the people that I have are really solid, good people that, are trustworthy and they have the right intentions and all that stuff. But I mean, ultimately, you surround yourself with the right people, anything's possible.
Yeah.
So when I started, it was just me. I didn't have a facility. So we were able to work something for a little while there, and the team started expanding and stuff like that and getting new people in. Some people leave and, you hire some new ones. But as of now, overall, once I figured it out and I was like, okay, this is what we need in order for this to be successful, and I just kind of stuck to that, then we have the right people,
I think there's a beauty in that, and there's an art to it. When you start not knowing anything and you have enough passion, you have enough dedication, you could turn something so minuscule, so small, into something so grandiose and so wonderful.
Yeah.
And like you're learning along the way as you're building this thing, and then it's just like before you even know it, it becomes this wonderful empire that you built, which is Cover Canine Training. And listen, people, you could Google it.
Yeah.
You're gonna see ratings up the wazoo.
Right.
All positive. This isn't bullshit.
Right.
I wouldn't have anybody on here
that was
fucking half-ass. And you legitimately, dude, like, bowed down.
Thank you. Yeah.
Like it's nice, dude. I'm fucking proud of you, man. It's great. I don't even like pets.
Yeah.
Fuck pets. Yeah. But I like that you like them.
I love them. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
You love it. It's great. So not only do you offer with Cover Canine training, do you offer canine training, obviously, which is like work dogs, sniffing cocaine bombs, drugs, the whole nine. But you also obviously do house pets and stuff like that. I know the styles we talked about, it differs vastly, right? Which breed of dog is the most stubborn and pain in the ass to train when it comes to canine training, and then when it comes to being a house pet from your experience?
From my experience, I'm trying to think here. Yeah, so I mean, yeah. So on like the canine side, like when we're picking these dogs, most of the time you're getting what you want. A lot of times you're getting the dog that you need for the task, and so you don't really there's not really one particular breed on the working side that I would say is like more stubborn than another. Okay, it's more based on the personality of the dog, right? So some dogs are going to be easier to work with than others. Some are going to take a little bit more work. On the civilian side, like for pet dogs, Dalmatians, man.
Yeah?
They drive me nuts. Yeah. Really? Don't tell Dan that. Dan had one.
He had one?
Dan had a Dalmatian.
I don't remember.
He was on the fire department. He took his picture with the Dalmatian on the front of the fire engine. Yeah.
Shout out Steady.
It's no hate. I'm not hating on anybody with a Dalmatian, but they can be a handful. Yeah, they're still cool dogs. You don't see a lot of them anymore.
I think they're ugly, to be honest. White with black spots. Yeah, they look more like a plague than a breed. You know what I mean? So you actually, what's funny is after you've built this brand, this house, this star-studded, beautiful training facility that you actually now are getting a star-studded clientele. Didn't you have a Jersey Shore cast member as one of your clients?
We had Nicole.
Who, Snooki?
It's Nicole to me. Yeah. We keep it formal. We were very fortunate to have her as a client. When she got her puppy, we worked her in the beginning. She did some training with us and stuff like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. How did that situation go? I don't consider her to be too. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I could imagine her training her dog would have been a little awkward.
No, she was very nice. Yeah, she was. I had a very good experience with her.
That's God bless.
I think with any of this. I think with any of this stuff, I mean it sincerely. I think with any of this stuff that once you get to know somebody and you see them kind of outside of things.
Yeah.
No problem. She was fine. Very, very normal to me.
God bless.
Again, no offense to anybody that likes the show. I never watched the show.
Oh no,
no, I never really watched it.
I
knew who she was when she reached out, but she was very polite and
I mean, you got to treat her that way, right?
That's it. Yeah,
you can't
keep
fucking.
Keep everybody everybody gets top treatment with us, right? Like everybody gets treated the same. So
that's the way.
It doesn't matter who you are. Yeah, we're gonna give you 100% regardless.
Yeah. Well, not only that, you recently were on, if I'm correct, the Housewives of New Jersey on the show.
Yeah, I was on there. Yep.
So what was that for? What happened?
That's Jennifer Aiden. So Jennifer Aiden from the show had reached out to me for her dog Biscuit, and I started doing some lessons with her.
Love that name, Biscuit.
Yeah, cute dog. Again, another. She's amazing. Been really, really good to me. Like developed a good friendship with her. Did a ton of lessons with her, and then during the course of it, the opportunity came about for me to be on the show. She was having a party, asked for us to help out with that.
Awesome.
So we went and facilitated. It was some of the other cast members brought their dogs with them, and we kind of provided like daycare for them while they were filming and whatnot. So I got to interact on the show. My couple minutes of fame there.
Yeah.
But it was a fun experience. I mean, it's a good experience. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, that's great. Send me that clip. I need that. I want to see it.
You got it.
I haven't seen that show in fucking years, man. Yeah. It's been a while. So, there's many dog colleges out there, right? Tons of them, where they have in-house. I don't know what you call it, boarding, if you will, stuff like that. So there's one. I don't know much about dogs. I don't want pets, like I told you. I expressed that greatly before. But, I pay attention to what's going on locally. And I always, as a kid, saw that place, Howlin' Wheelers.
Yeah, in Cedar Grove, yep.
It's a pretty well-known, I guess, like doggy establishment.
Mike's been there for a very long time, yeah.
Yeah, what is the difference between a place like that in a place like yours?
Yeah. So How Wheelers, they do a number of different things here, right? So they do boarding, they do grooming, they do training. So there's a multitude of services that he offers there.
Okay.
We train dogs.
Gotcha.
That's it.
You don't do boarding, you don't do that stuff. You just
No. So we subcontract that stuff out. Like I have a couple instructors that they do it on their own. So John is one of our instructors. NJ Canine Services is his company. If somebody's going on vacation, they want to leave the dog with him. Gideon is my full-time employee. He
Love
basically
that name.
He's awesome.
Love that name.
Manages, oversees the facility. He just started doing it on his own as well. If somebody goes away, they want to leave the dog with them, but we don't keep dogs in the facility overnight because our objective is
you're training.
Train.
Yeah.
So we have like a day board program. So if somebody wants to leave the dog during the day for training, they can drop the dog off, but they pick the dog up in the afternoon.
Oh, it's like a doggy daycare, if you will.
Doggy daycare, but the difference is like a doggy daycare is pretty much, it's almost like unregulated, right? So like you go in and the dogs are like all running around playing and doing stuff like that. When they come to us, they're training. So we cycle the dogs, right? Like they come out, we bring a couple dogs out, we'll do socialization, we'll work on obedience. Those dogs go up, next dogs come out, right? So not to say that we don't give them the opportunity to play, but a lot of times when you're bringing your dog to like a doggy daycare, you're literally dropping the dog off and the dogs are just kind of hanging out during the day.
They're doing whatever the fuck they want, no guidance.
It's not structured to be, it's not structured around training, it's supervision. So they get to hang out with the other dogs. It's not a knock on anybody else's business. They teach their own.
What you do.
Yeah, it's just that our objective and what we do is we train dogs. So if you bring your dog to me, like we're not just gonna have it hanging out there, right? Like we're gonna work on stuff. So
yeah, of course. So do you have any plans in the work for the near future as far as projects goes? I mean, I know your most recent project was combining two of your establishments into one, which is basically what you did. Is there anything that you have in the works for the future as far as your career goes, as far as covered canine training, etc.?
I think I'm there, man. I think everything that I'm doing is what I want to be doing right now. You know, so as far as the business is concerned, like we had Caldwell, which was 900 square feet, and then I had a location in Cedar Grove, which was 1,500 square feet. Closed one, like we said before, I'm still hanging on to the other. The new facility that we have is 3,000 square feet. It has a kennel room. It has a front training room. It has a storefront. It has a training arena where we can do, basic agility, scent work, bite work. We're offering a ton of services and a ton of classes and, having the instructors that are doing the overnight stuff, like we're able to kind of offer that through them now. So, the business is where I never thought it would be. You know what I mean? That when I started this and I started doing it, like people were like, a lot of people were asking me for help with their dogs. Like they knew I was a dog guy. Hey, can you help me do this? And I was like, maybe I'll start doing this more formally. And the next thing I know,
wow,
kind of here we are. And I have like an amazing team of people. Again, I mentioned a couple names there, but out of all the people that I have, all of them have backgrounds and experience in canine. They all teach me stuff.
Wow.
So like it's a very talented group of people. We have a lot of, very knowledgeable and experienced
it's amazing, man.
Instructors that are doing an immense job, teaching and working with the clientele. So
you built an empire.
I can't ask for anything else right now. Like I'm just like, okay, maybe one day. I don't know. I can't say it because we just like the paint just dried a bigger facility, but that's again, I started in the park and then it was like 900 square feet, 1,500 square feet, 3,000 square feet,
wow.
Couple people, 4 people, 5 people, 6 people. That's 13 of us, so.
Yeah, it's amazing. You really, you built an empire. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, man. God bless you, bro.
You surround yourself with the right people and you can do anything.
It's all it takes, right? It's all it takes. And a healthy mindset. Mm-hmm. And I always look forward mindset, which is what you always preach. Listen, man, I'm fucking proud of you.
Thank you.
I already expressed a million times. I love you. If you can plug your socials, your website address, whatever you want to promote yourself, please do that now.
Oh yeah, so you can find us on Facebook, right? We're, Cover Canine Training, Instagram. Definitely follow our Instagram. That's where we share most of our stuff.
What's the
at Cover Canine Training. So
there's no hyphen or
Cover
nothing, obviously.
_Canine_Training. Yeah. So Cover Canine Training. You'll see a picture of me on there, right? Or you could look up Justin Nielsen. I'm pretty sure it comes up with my name.
And your website? What's your website?
CoverCanineTraining.com. Yep.
And that's where you can get all your information.
Yeah, anybody can train with us. We're not the vast majority of people that come to us for training are regular civilians. Somebody gets a dog and they want to train that dog, but you're going to be training with people like I said, our instructors, they're not your average dog trainers.
That's amazing. Yeah, like I said, if you guys Google the name,
you'll see it.
You're gonna see all the reviews, all the shit, star-studded, baby.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story. You know, it's a very heartwarming story, and you know, I really appreciate this time with you.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Until
for
next
having
time.
me.
Yeah, for sure.